All right, that was the call to order. Roll call, please.
Rhonda,
Here.
Castroville,
Here.
County of Monterey,
Here.
Delray Oaks,
Here.
Marina Coast,
Here.
Monterey,
Here.
Pacific Grove,
Here.
Salinas,
Here.
Sand City,
Here.
Seaside.
Here. All right, we get to agenda item 3, which is a pledge of allegiance, and I don't think we've done this in a while. We're going to ask Chaito if she might lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, Chai. Appreciate that. And are there any additions to the agenda from board members? All right, seeing none, we'll go to agenda item 5. That would be approval of the agenda. We'll take a motion, then we'll go out to the public, and then we'll have a vote.
Move to approve.
Thank you very much, Director Smith. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much, Director Garcia Arzola. We go out to the public. Anyone wishing to comment on approval of the agenda?
and I don't see any raised hands from the public.
Thank you, Chai. Roll call, please.
Rhonda,
Yes.
Castroville,
Yes.
County of Monterey.
Aye.
Delray Oaks,
Aye.
Marina Coast.
Yes.
Monterey,
Yes.
Pacific Grove,
Aye.
Salinas,
Aye.
Sand City.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimous.
Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 6, which is public comments. Anyone wishing to address the board on matters not appearing on the agenda may do so now for not more than 3 minutes. Comments on any other matter listed on the agenda are welcome at the time the matter is being considered by the board. Anyone from the public? I see a hand up.
We will hear from Christopher Bunn. Go ahead, Mr. Bunn.
Thank you very much. My name's Christopher Bunn, and I'm the current interim president of the Salinas Basin Water Alliance. And I understand that your board later in the month, or perhaps the following month, will be contemplating the expansion of Pure Water Monterey in some fashion or another. And I was wondering if the negotiations that were requested by the Board of Supervisors back in March of 2022 in regards to renegotiating some of the source waters, what the status of that negotiation is, if that occurred. And also our alliance, our members farm and own land in the Blanco and near the wreck ditch. And, just looking back on this last year, anecdotally, it doesn't seem like there was a lot of water flowing through those two ditches. And I was wondering if you had any updated numbers on what kind of water was available from those two sources and how that was used. That's something of great interest, of course, to our alliance in context of the expansion of Pure Water Monterey. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bunn. Is there anyone else from the public wishing to comment on items not on the agenda?
And I'm not seeing any other raised hands from the public.
Okay. Very good. Staff, if you could make note of trying to get some information to Mr. Bunn on his questions.
Yes, got it.
Thank you very much. All right, we move to the consent agenda. Directors, do you have any items you wish to pull from consent?
7F for comment.
7 Foxtrot. Okay, Director Church has pulled 7F. Any others?
Move approval of the remaining items.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Appreciate that very much. Director Craig, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Director
Mr. Chair, if mine was not really to poll for a separate vote, was more for comment on there. So,
Oh, okay. So
I mean, we could include it in the motion. I just had,
fair
I'll
enough.
hold my motion until after comments through the chair.
Perfect. Go ahead.
yeah. This came up a couple months ago and there was a little bit of a discussion that
Yeah, I think the fund is for low income aid is around $80,000 and it wasn't really being utilized much a few months ago. I raised some concern about whether it is being adequately put out to the public for use. And I believe there was a discussion about putting that out again on information in some manner. And I'm just curious, so if anything's been done, as I noticed that we're still not having a huge amount of utilization of it. And usually when you offer aid and free money, there's usually more interest into things like that. So I'm just saying we're not really getting it out properly. Somehow we need to take a different approach.
Right, and thank you for that. Mike is on vacation, so I don't have an update unless, Fred, do you have an update on this money as far as for helping?
Yeah, I can give a little update. So just to kind of as a reminder, what we currently do right now is they are on everybody's monthly bills about the program. So they get a monthly notice about it. We've been putting it on our website. We temporarily took off the banner just to because we wanted to let people know about the draft of the budget. So we have kind of like limited space on the website, but we'll be putting it back on there as an advertisement there. The other thing, we actually just had a recent conversation with United Way as well too. And what they're going to be doing is they have a 311 number. So they're going to be basically starting to announce that as part of their 311 number as well too. One of the things, and we'll be coming back to the board with this at a later time, we'll probably look to expand the number of months also offered as a credit. Currently, right now, we offer it basically for a one bill, which is basically 2 months worth. Likely what we'll look to do, and again, we'll bring it back to the board and get comments from the board, is likely to expand that to either like 4 to potentially even up to 8 months. You'll see this on the slide in the revised budget presentation for tonight. We've allocated about 200,000 this year for that program because there was a desire to really increase the funding for that program so we could fund more assistance. So
Just
To address your concern, we could put all the money in, but if we're not getting people to enroll in the program, then we need to do something differently. So when Mike comes back, we'll talk to Mike and Rachel to see what are they going to do in addition to what has been done in the past, because what's been done in the past hasn't spent the original money. So we will come back to the board with what we're going to do differently.
So just to try to follow up and look at things a little creatively on this, I know the folks obviously who are paying for the rates are property owners. But obviously there are a lot of renters who are sort of indirectly paying because they're paying rent for this. And that would be, I guess the question is, are we really getting outside of our policy framework if we try to address any way to assist those people who are renters, who are users, but are not the ones technically directly paying, but really are paying through the rent?
this is something we'd have to work with BB&K on basically, because there are some potential issues. I mean, right now, what we've done right now is the people that get credits, they are actually the ones getting the bill. And so, I mean, if they're not getting the bill directly, in essence, they can't get it. So this issue, the board's talked about this issue in particular. If we go in the future to the property tax roll, for collection, that will likely have to revise the program even more, because obviously that will kind of change the dynamics of who's being billed a little bit. So just FYI on that.
And
Okay.
another thing is the monies that go into this is not ratepayers' funds. So I wanted to make that clear. So we're getting that from.
We get it from interest, Tammy, and we also get it just from some we get some one-time monies like insurance rebates, stuff like that. Basically non-fee revenue. That's the key thing on that. So
Thank you.
And that's just to be clear, that's a legal
Yes.
restriction.
absolutely.
Even if we wanted to, we'd be violating the law if we used ratepayer money to go into that 200,000. Yeah,
Correct.
absolutely. Director Church, any other?
No other questions.
Thank you very much. Director Craig, go ahead.
I already made my motion. Call for the vote, please.
I was gonna ask to make a comment.
Yes, please, go ahead.
So does, with this here, fund, wasn't that mainly for low income families?
Yeah.
So how will it affect property owners? Can they apply?
Well,
Because
well,
there's,
yeah.
they may not be low income.
Yeah, so basically right now, it's kind of a combination of people that are applying, applying and receiving the funds. Some of them are renters because right now, some of the property owners have assigned the bills, in care of to the renters. So if they are getting the bills directly, they're able to get the credits. Some of the property owners are people that have lived here for a long time. And so they may own their house, but they have relatively low income, so they still qualify as well too. So it's a combination.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Vice Chair.
Just to clarify, and you may have identified this earlier, but I remember in previous conversations, there was an idea of not just looking at expanding how many payments, but also looking at eligibility, who could also qualify for that. So
Absolutely. So just as a clarification for the board, right now, what we do is basically anybody, if they qualify under what's called the PG&E Cares program, they basically automatically, as long as they just show us that they're enrolled in that program, they can basically, receive assistance, through our program. So there are some potential other ways that we could look at additional ways for eligibility. This is one of the reasons we were actually talking with United Way. It gets a little bit more complicated when you get outside of the CARES program, because, for example, if you look at W-2s, is a good example. You'd really have to get W-2s from any members of the household. So we typically obviously wouldn't ask somebody if you're married and you have. So this is something we'd really want to work with BB&K in particular on to really get their advice and thoughts before we kind of proceed with any changes. The CARES has worked really well for us, through this time. So, but it does limit somewhat people that qualify.
Any other comments on the site? All right, thank you. So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Anyone from the public wishing to comment on this item? This, by the way, just so we're clear, is the entire consent agenda, A through H.
I don't see any raised hands from the public. Chair.
All right, roll call, please.
Veranda,
Yes.
Castroville,
Yes.
County of Monterey.
Aye.
Delray Oaks.
Aye.
Marina Coast.
Yes.
Monterey,
yes.
Pacific Grove,
Aye.
Enos, Sand City,
Hi,
Seaside.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Very good. Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 8A, Budget and Personnel Committee.
Move approval.
Okay, to receive the draft minutes, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Anyone from the public wishing to comment on the item?
Don't see any raised hands from the public.
Any final comment from directors? And roll call, please.
Veranda,
Yes.
Castroville,
Yes.
County of Monterey.
Aye.
Delray Oaks.
Aye.
Marina Coast.
Yes.
Monterey,
Yes.
Pacific Grove,
Yes.
Salinas,
Aye.
Sand City,
hi.
Seaside.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 8B, Recycled Water Committee. Anyone care to move receipt of the draft minutes?
So moved, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. Anyone from the public wishing to comment on this item?
There are no raised hands from the public, Chair Moore.
All right. Roll call vote, please.
Veranda,
Yes.
Castroville,
Yes.
County of Monterey.
Aye.
Delray Oaks.
Aye.
Marina Coast.
Yes.
Monterey,
Yes.
Pacific Grove,
Aye.
Salinas,
Aye.
Sand City,
Hi,
Seaside.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. We move on to agenda item 9A, consider adoption of resolution 2023-07 to approve fiscal year operating budget and capital budget for the agency.
So-
Mr.
Yes, so Fred is going to give a condensed version of the same presentation that we gave last budget board workshop. And if you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer them. I guess as you guys noticed, Paul Shudo is in Singapore. So we're here holding down the fort. And Fred, if you could go ahead and take it away.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tammy. And we have a PowerPoint too that I think Shai's going to bring up as well too. So just as kind of a reminder for the public, this is in essence our third discussion regarding our proposed budget for next fiscal year. We initially presented kind of a summary of it at the May 12th 2023 Budget and Personnel Committee. We had a more extensive discussion at our budget workshop on May 25th. And we're bringing back, this is pretty much a more condensed version of that presentation, with actually incorporating some of the comments that were made during that presentation as part of the PowerPoint. One of the things I want to notice as we're bringing up the PowerPoint, we did include, one of the board members requested that we include a 2-page summary, of the budget. So that actually is in the board packet. It's on page 344 and 345. This is something we've done for the last few years, but we thought it was a really good idea. And so we're going to look going forward when we do our budget hearings to include it as part of the budget hearings as well too, but it is in your guys' packet. I just wanted to let you know. And so anyway, let me go ahead and get started. I know the PowerPoint will be up in just a second. So just as a reminder, basically our total budget for next year is approximately about $94 million, with a slight amount going to, next slide, to reserves, both for pure water. The amount for pure water reserves is to meet our basically bond coverage requirements. We have to have a minimum of 110% coverage in the pure water Monterey fund related to our SRF loans, and then a small amount for our wastewater fund as well, to about 400,000. Just as a reminder, as part of the budget, we've built in some additional contingency funds. So just in case some of our expenses run a little bit higher than expected, we have that contingency we can fall back on as well too. So of the total budget, 30% is capital. So it's a pretty significant investment in our capital. And if you look at just wastewater itself, about 27% of that is for capital. And we continue to make good strides towards the goals that the board has established regarding our reserves. So we're anticipating by the end of 23-24, we'll be at 40% of reserves for operations and about 8% of our 10-year capital plan as for capital reserves. So it's significant progress. If you look at the goals that the board previously established, those were basically 50% by fiscal year 25-26 for operations reserves and 10% for capital reserves, again, by 25-26. Our debt rating, so we were just recently reaffirmed for the expansion that they are rating us at basically the same rating as we currently have, A+, which is very good news for us. They also notice as well too, they'll likely go back and look at our bonds, and we're hoping that they'll actually, the next time they do a rating for the agency as a whole, we're hoping they'll go up to at least a AA-. I mean, we'll keep our fingers crossed on that, because our position has significantly improved since the last time that they did their rating. And just as a reminder, obviously the higher the rating you get, if we have to do wastewater bonds in the future, that will mean lower interest rates for us. So it's a very good thing for the agency. Next slide. Okay. So I updated this one a little bit. We had a little bit slide last time on the comparables with other agencies. So I kind of updated the slide a little bit because it might have been a little bit confusing the way we had it, just to show kind of where we're at, what the median was, and basically the variance, basically the comparable variance. So although we're making good progress on our reserves, both for our capital and operating reserves, we're still below the median compared to our other comparable agencies. And our pension coverage, it's pretty close to our comparables, but it is slightly lower. And on the flip side a little bit, one of the importance for our reserves is the fact that we do have a high amount of debt in comparison to our comparable agencies. Obviously, we've had to issue a significant amount related to the initial phase of pure water, and we'll have to, obviously with the expansion bonds, we'll be issuing an additional amount. So it's really, with our plan, we're trying to basically do as much pay as you go with the wastewater program. So the goal is to rely a minimal amount on issuing of debt because of the fact that we do have a significant amount of debt outstanding. So this kind of just summarizes those points. Next slide, check. And just as a reminder, these, again, some of the same points we brought up last time, but this includes, the rate increases that were adopted as far as the 5-year plan. And we want to just note that basically those rates are within the 218 guidelines that we did when we advertised for those rates. It basically reflects the adopted budget with the water resources agencies. And as a reminder, all of those costs are 100% reimbursable from the water resources agency. We wanted to add that on as a point, one of the board members noted from last time. And then pure water, again, this is assuming production of about 4,300 acre feet of recycled water for next year. And just as a reminder, again, 85% of that is for Cal-Am and the Water Management District. 15% of that relates to the Marina Coast Water District, basically. Next slide. And again, as you can kind of see on these slides, we basically have two graphs here. One is basically what our member agencies' combined rates will be for next year. They range as low as Castroville. Castroville has no add-on rate. So basically they reflect our rate, which is basically going to be $44 for next year. The highest is Ord at what, $87. The median is basically in the, the Sand City, Seaside, Delray Oaks at about up 61 combined in essence. And then you can see the next slide, what we do, and we've done this last couple of years, we kind of show our rates versus our comparables. And we're pretty much within low to mid range of the comparables that we have. So that's a good thing for us. Next slide, Chuck. On the expense side, one of the good things, and Paul mentioned this last time during the presentation, is we have a pretty good even split of our expenses. As you can see, basically operations represent about 37% of the total. Personnel represent about 26%, and capital and debt combined represent about 37% as well too. So they do incorporate the cost of living adjustments that were in our MOUs that are good through the end of next fiscal year. They do reflect the higher utility and chemical costs that we're expecting for next year as well too. And all of the really significant amount of capital improvement plans that we're doing for next year as well too. Next slide, Jay. So again, these just kind of highlight some of the main goals that we're trying to focus on for next year's budget. One of the things we added, this was again, a comment based upon what the board had last time. We added the amount basically that we're looking to fund the low assistance program for next year. And basically that's about $200,000. And again, as Tammy mentioned before, that's all funded by non-fee revenue. I mean, basically interest and some one-time miscellaneous revenues as well too. Next slide, Chuck. And this was, I think, oh yes, one of the board members also asked to provide a little bit more detail on our various debt issues that we had outstanding. So we modified this slide to kind of give a little bit more detail on basically what the interest rates are, when it matures, and basically the annual debt service that we're paying on them. The good news, and this point we brought about last time, is that first one, the first two in particular, they mature again in 2026. So that's going to free up about $2 million a year that we're able to either look to pay down an additional amount of the pension bonds, basically, or if the board decides to potentially invest in additional amount of capital improvements. But it's a significant event that we're pretty excited about that's going to be happening in just a couple of years. Next slide. And again, pension continues to be, an important concern for us. As we mentioned before, the board did approve earlier this year, basically the pension trust fund with both CalPERS and with PARS as well too. So the amount we have allocated each year is about $400. I'm sorry, $400,000. Yeah, no, $400 won't do very much. It really won't. It's like a cup of coffee, basically. So, but yeah, $400,000. And obviously we can reevaluate that on a year-by-year basis. But we're looking to, basically build up that fund over time. The nice thing about the trust funds, they give us some more flexibility in the types of investments that we can do, and we can do them for a longer period of time. And the goal would be obviously for those trust funds to earn a higher overall rate of return than our general investments basically could. So, and they'll help to basically also reduce our net pension liability as well. So next slide, check. And then again, the long-term forecast. So this is just a reminder, we still are on target within the 5-year period. Basically, we're anticipating, given our current rates that we have approved through fiscal year 25-26, of achieving an operating reserve of about 45% and a capital reserve of about 10%. That assumes that obviously the inflation doesn't go, basically what we're assuming in here is that the inflation would range between 6 to 10%. If it stays within that range, we should hit those goals by 25-26. The important thing on this slide to note as well too, it does cover through a 10-year period, basically fiscal year 30-31. That would obviously require some additional rate increases from the board. Right now, in order to meet those targets of basically a 50% operating reserve and 20% capital reserve, we would need to raise rates on average between about 8 to 9% in the future. So that's something we'll continue to kind of work with the board on. Obviously, I'd like to see if we can get those lower in the future, but that's something, as we do each year's budget, we'll give the board an update as to kind of where we stand on meeting our targets, basically. So next slide, Shay. So again, we are continuing to invest significantly, in the infrastructure in the agency. Our total infrastructure budget for wastewater for next year is about $16 million. Of that, basically, a lot of it is for the plant and pump stations, to almost $10 million going towards those types of projects. We have another about 1.6 million going for different types of capital outlay for the departments. And we continue to invest in major capital maintenance at our plant. This is very important to make sure, it's required to be up 24/7. So it's important that we continue to invest in the proper maintenance that we need for our plant. And then we were fortunate this year, thanks to all of the staff, including Mike and Rachel, that we got some additional grant funds that we're able to kind of use to fund another 3.6 million as well too. And Tammy, I don't know, do you want to add anything about the capital program for next year?
No, I think that's on the next.
Oh, the next slide. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. Thank you. Thank you.
So I briefed this at the last board workshop. Basically, the majority of next year's proposed goes to the digester mixers or the Energia project. Keep in mind that we're hoping to get a lot of this back with the tax investment fund. We won't know that until, it's over, but it's looking like we will be receiving it. And that's basically 40% of the entire project. Keep in mind, we've got the grant for another 3.8 million. And so that left us about 750,000 to pay out of pocket. The only item on the Energia project is 10%. If you don't do, I believe, all US buy and build, but there is a chance that they've already got a note to state that because the only place you can get their mixers is Germany, and you get that in, we will get that additional 10%. So worst case scenario is 30%, best case scenario is 40%. And then the next largest chunk of almost 2 million is for items relating to water flow. Those of you that toured the plant, the fire tanks that we have are abominable. There's holes in them. We basically have had to rent water tanks for fire suppression for the last several years because it got kicked out of the CIP budget. Also, Salinas is our largest pump station, and Daryl and Daryl's team had suggested having a bypass, a pump around. Well, I call it bypass. People here call it pump around, but in case there's an emergency. So that's similar to the bypass that we have at Headworks, but it would be for the Salinas pump station. And then, of course, the pump stations, Monterey and Seaside, as you know, we did the design this year, and we'll be going out for bid actually in June and get those two projects. It also includes Seaside. We received some monies from federal monies to move the electrical. Pump station 15 is the one with the king tides that the water goes over, and we're trying to move the electrical to the park across the street. And then Moss Landing, there's an underground storage tank that we'd like to abandon. So that's the 1.8. Keep in mind, a lot of these projects extend through several years, so you're only seeing a portion. And then the rest is corrosion control program, which my goal is to get that back up to $1 million like it was 6 years ago. And then, of course, we have the SEP and then plant electrical. So you give us money, we will spend it. We will find a home for it. We have plenty of things to upgrade and to fix.
And with that, last slide there. Basically, in summary, we recommend that the board adopt the resolution approving the proposed fiscal year 2023-2024 operating and capital budget for the agency. and be happy to answer any questions. from the board.
Any questions, directors? Director Donaldson.
Yeah, so I noticed the debt we carry is higher than comparable organizations. Is that reflected in the bond rating that we currently have, or will that be considered on the next review that they do?
So yeah, the bond rating, at least my understanding, that was done before we issued the Pure Water Monterey bonds, basically. So it's pretty much several years old, our bond rating. It definitely will be considered as part of next year's rating. It wasn't, they did kind of look at it somewhat when they gave us the current rating for the expansion, basically. They felt, however, really strong about basically our revenue sources from that, basically, in essence, Caliam and Marina Coast Water District. So that basically kind of overcomes, that issue of the debt. But, and I think what will help a lot if they really see, our basically our reserve plan, that we're looking not to basically rely upon debt for funding future water infrastructure. That will really help us a lot, because if we were planning to issue additional wastewater debt besides the pure water debt, that potentially could be problematic.
Thanks, Fred.
Any other questions from directors? Director Craig.
So first, just thank you for including that 2-page summary. That was my request. And I just, in my decade plus of being in local government, the general public doesn't necessarily have the wherewithal to go through 347 pages. And so it's always good to just have a quick recap at the very front. And it shows a level of transparency with the organization. So thank you for doing that. My question's a little convoluted, so I'm hoping you can follow along with my bouncing ball in my head. But I know that we have been talking about WIFIA loans, particularly for Pure Water Monterey. And I'm wondering if the passage of tonight's budget includes the contribution that we need to be able to go after the WIFIA loans, like the capital improvement. I saw there was about $13 million for Pure Water Monterey, but I don't think that discussion has come forward to this board yet in terms of approval of moving forward with that kind of debt. Am I correct on that?
Actually, thank you for bringing this up, because this is a really good point. So the only thing that's right now in this budget related to expansion is stuff actually that the board's previously approved, basically kind of related to some design and some of the other wells. The whole part about, the board has approved the financing, for it, but we are still going to be coming back to the board. I think it's July, if I remember right, for the actual approval of the expansion projects. When we do that at that time, we'll basically come with a budget adjustment for those
Got
costs.
it. Okay,
as well.
because I know it said something like early to mid-June it would be presented, and I was like, so we're at June 5th, and I just wasn't sure if it was coming on the 25th or whatever that looks like. And I have more questions on that, but I think I'll save that for later on in the meeting. But thank you for clarifying.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Through the chair. Yes,
Gerbo.
regarding the last rate increase, the Prop 218, when does that end?
So it ends in 25-26, basically. So if you think about it, we are in our third year, basically next year, 23-24 will be the third year of the rate increase. So it's going from $38. This is just strictly for residential, but from $38 a month to $44. And that's our portion. Obviously, there's an add-on portion for our members as well, too. So they just, obviously our customers just get one bill with the combined rate.
And the second question is, you mentioned that there will be additional rate increases. Is that, and that would be rate increases of 8 to 9%?
So yeah, so basically what the board's approved right now is they've approved rate increases through 25-26. So it'll be going like $44 next year, $50 they approved for year 4, or I'm sorry, $50.95 a month for year 4, $54 for basically year 5, because we wanted to basically, get those percentage increases a lot lower. We will be coming back to the board probably within let's say another year, 18 months, with another whole new rate study, basically for the future years. What we're trying to give you an idea, though, is that if we ultimately want to hit those board established reserve targets, that's likely what we're going to need, is as potentially as part of rate increases. Now, if our reserves end up being better, at year end, we may not need those percentages. If we don't realize the amount of, if the inflation kind of dims down a bit and we don't have to raise the budget nearly as much, again, we may not need those percentage of rate increases. It's kind of like a snapshot right now of what we think, but obviously it'll change every year. But we don't want to, basically, we're trying not to surprise the board as much as possible, to kind of give you as much good information as we can. So when we come with the rate study, you at least have an initial idea of what potential rate increases might be.
Okay, and my point here is because the past board had not raised rates for many, many years,
12 years.
many years.
Who's counting?
And
Actually, there were 14, there were 12 consecutive, but 14 total years, basically. And I'm glad you brought up that point, because you're really shooting yourself in the foot, by doing that. I mean, in essence, you're kind of shifting the cost to the future customers
right,
instead of evening it out. So
understandably. So now we've raised the rates and, just don't want to, I'm wondering how, that we're not shocking these, the ratepayers, because we're trying to catch up all of a sudden.
And I think we've had some good outreach, when we did the rate increases, we really explained a lot to the public that, we're trying to invest in our infrastructure. Our infrastructure, it's one of those things, it has to run 24/7. It can't fail. It's a disaster if it fails. So we need to make sure, and it's getting older. It's not getting younger. I mean, our plant was built in in the early 90s or whatever. So we need to invest in it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. But we want to smooth it out. So, and that's what we're hoping to do in the future. So the percentage rate increases are smaller than they were for their first, 5 years that we had to do it for. So in essence.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Just for the public, as Fred pointed out, not only did some past boards a decade or more ago not raise rates for many, many years, they also did not invest in renewing our capital infrastructure. So some of that has gotten old and creaky. Staff has held tours for us to go see some of that. Anything you put on the coast made of steel is going to rust. I don't care how well you paint the stuff. So lots of corrosion control issues and so forth. So yes, the board in the recent 3 or 4 years went through the uncomfortable process of looking at rates and raising rates in kind of a shocking manner. We tried to mitigate it as much as we could, as Director Carbone, because you and I were part of that. But that resulted in this 5-year Prop 218 process that we're in the 3rd year of. We could, as a choice of the board, do a 3-year Prop 218 process. We could do a 10-year Prop 218 process. If we wanted to really give Fred some headaches, we could do a Prop 218 process every single year. Probably not such a good idea. So as he indicated, in a couple of years, we are going to have to go into a Prop 218 process again. We'll need to do a rate study. We'll see where we are. Do all you can to keep inflation down. I don't know how you do that, but invest your money in, I don't know, treasuries or something. I don't know what it takes, but keep inflation down. Maybe those future rates in the next round of Prop 218 discussions, it won't be quite as uncomfortable as the last were. All right. Does anyone care to make a motion to approve the budget?
Public comment.
You want to go to public comment first before we have a motion on the table? Okay, then we can go to public comment. Anyone from the public wishing to comment on the proposed budget?
I don't see any raised hands from the public.
Care to make the motion, Director Vice Chair Williamson, or you want to?
I will move to approve the budget, and I do have a comment, but I'll wait till see if it's seconded.
Second.
Thank you very much.
That was a long wait.
All right, we have a motion.
I got it.
By Vice Chair Williamson, and very rapidly seconded by Director Smith.
So it's just on this discussion of the rate increases, and I appreciate staff's ability to work with the board and the public in being flexible. So we initially had this discussion during the pandemic. And so there was a fear of increasing the rates during the pandemic because of the impact that it had on our community, economically speaking, even though we needed it, and it was already deferred for so long. So we moved forward through that process. And I just wanted to give kudos to the staff for that, because it's an uncomfortable situation. And I'm excited for the process that we're going to move forward together, even though it's going to be a little bit of heartburn for folks to have to feel that. And so hopefully we keep that in mind in regards to the decisions that we make as a board, and not continue to kick the can down the road, because our staff is dependent on it. Our residents and our ratepayers are dependent on it, so that we make sure that we can keep up with the infrastructure. And as you said, hopefully there might be a certain circumstance where we don't have to increase the rates as much as we're potentially anticipating. So I think this is a solid balance of our capital investment and also investing into our reserves. And so I just really appreciate staff's work on this.
Thank you very much. Other comments from other directors? All right, seeing none. Roll call vote, please.
Rhonda,
Yes.
Castroville,
Yes.
County of Monterey.
Aye.
Delray Oaks,
Aye.
Marina Coast.
Yes.
Monterey,
Yes.
Pacific Grove,
Aye.
Salinas,
Aye.
Sand City,
Aye.
Seaside.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
Very good. Fred, you have a budget.
Nice.
I don't think I've ever seen him so happy before.
All right.
Yes.
We did hear a cheer from Singapore, indeed.
Yes. I'm sure you did.
All right, we move on to 10A Pure Water Monterey update.
Good evening, Chair Moore, directors. Can you hear me okay?
We can, Director, or Mr. Lindau.
Yes, Dave Lindau, Pure Water Monterey Program Manager. On Pure Water Monterey itself, the M1W O&M staff continue to do a great job in making water. They're at 11,000 acre feet since inception. And more importantly, in the context of the fiscal year goal, this year's goal of 3,500 acre feet, they actually achieved that goal by the end of April. So all the water in May and June is going straight into the operational reserve, which currently stands at 1,520 acre feet. So taking a wet year, banking water for the next dry year. With respect to expansion, as the board knows, we have 2 construction bid packages out for bid right now. We had a mandatory pre-bid meeting on May 9th. We had a good showing. We had 6 general contractors show up for the Advanced Water Purification Plant Expansion Project and 5 for the Injection Well Phase 4 project. We'll be opening those bids at the end of June. In the meantime, we're answering bidders' questions, staying in touch with the contractors, trying to maintain bidder interest. Perhaps the last highlight I'd offer to the board is we've been working very closely, M1W staff, the general manager, general counsel, with the city of Seaside, their city attorney and their city manager on getting the right of entry that expansions need for our new injection well field. And that has advanced since we met with the Recycle Water Committee. And it appears we're now on the city of Seaside agenda for June 15th to get what we need to keep the project on track. So we thank staff on both sides for making that happen. With that, I'd hand it back to the chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions of Mr. Lindau? Vice Chair Williamson?
I'm just wondering the status of the easement in Seaside for the expansion.
But as I just mentioned, we think that we are where we need to be with respect to processing the right of entry to allow construction to move forward. The Seaside agenda for City Council agenda for the 15th will have an agenda item to get us the approval we need from that council to solidify that paperwork so we can move forward.
Okay, thank you.
So just to follow up, Mr. Lindau, is that just a construction easement, or is what's agendized the permanent easement?
No, these aren't the permanent easements. As you know, M1W did an appraisal that was shared with Seaside. They've decided to get a second appraisal. In the meantime, to keep the program moving forward, we're going to be getting a right of easement and permission to construct. So it's not only the sites themselves, the construction easements we need, everything we need on a temporary basis up until the permanent easements can be finalized, negotiated, and sewn up.
Okay, thank you very much. And we no doubt appreciate Director Garcia Arizola's pressure on the Seaside City Council to keep the cost of that easement as low as possible, because that translates into lower costs for all our ratepayers, or at least the peninsula ratepayers. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Director Habino.
Dave, I just have a question. You said 3,500 acre feet was hit in April. Was that
Correct.
carryover from the previous year as well, though?
Well, they tracked the annual goal of 3,500 July through June, so it follows the fiscal year.
Okay.
So 3,500 acre feet were put into the Seaside Basin by the end of this past April. So that gives us May and June is what goes into reserves for this water year.
So the count for that 3,500 started on July 1st, 2022.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
And were you able to, during those high storm flows, were you able to, it sounds like you were able to process more? Was
That's
that with
correct.
added equipment, or is it same equipment, longer hours?
It was really running the plant at its capacity with the availability of that extra water. So yeah, so Tammy and her team, they had several months of 420, 430 acre feet, whereas our typical average is more in the neighborhood of 300, 325. So when they had the opportunity to put the pedal to the metal, they did. And so we see the benefits of that now.
No. Thank you.
Any other questions, directors?
Through the chair.
Yes, Director.
Just, it's kind of goes back to my question on budget, you know, as we talk about the WIFIA loans and certainly the source waters that I think was mentioned in public comment. I'm just wondering if perhaps we might be able to get a letter from like the Water Resources Agency to determine what type of, you know, source water is available. And I'm not talking about like the theoretical water, but just like the actual availability of sustainable long-term water. And I'm new to I'm new, and I know Christy did a great job with it, but I'd love to be able to sort of have that information as we go into those more robust conversations regarding taking out a significant amount of debt on a WIFIA loan for the project. I'm not here to sandbag anything. I just want to have a better understanding of that. And I know there's even a new guy over at the Water Resources Agency too, because Brett has left. So I think if I may make that request, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Vice Chair Williamson, go ahead.
And I would just add, if we could also at the same time look at where there are additional opportunities to add to our source water, right? So I know that there's the project that we're moving forward with in the city of Monterey that will add at least 100 additional acre feet a year with Lake El Estero water. So what does that look like? So that way, if there is a concern in regards to where some of the source water is coming from, how that can be maybe supported with future projects to make sure that we feel comfortable with what that looks like moving forward in the future.
Okay, any other?
Yes, I would also like to add that since we're so close to obligating the agency to millions of dollars, which we're receiving the grants, right? And loans, but is what type of guarantee will we have that we'll have source waters for 30 years for the Pure Water Monterey expansion? So, which falls into what everyone's asking here.
Right.
And also, do we have all the contracts in place, like with the city of Seaside? So, that- just questions to comments to ponder.
Okay, doke.
I have one more too. Sorry.
Go ahead,
Uh,
Director
is-
Hibby.
I was just, the contracts, the contract with the city of Salinas and Monterey County, yeah. And M1, where are we at with that?
So as far, well,
Not signed.
I can tell you, it's been stalled since December.
Yeah.
I think relative to with all the emergency issues, I guess. We were moving forward with negotiations on that long-term agreement through the fall. Yeah, but it hasn't been completed, nor has it been started up again, so.
I'll just go through the chair, if I may, just for the city of Salinas at least, I'll just acknowledge we have one employee that is working on that. So you can imagine with everything that had gone on, and certainly there are some disagreements and they're trying to get to a middle ground. It's not just, I mean, the storms were in March and it's now June, right? But I think that the continued conversation is occurring. It's just we have limited staff as well.
Yeah, I think Paul has had communications with the city manager directly and with the Water Resource Agency. Taking it out of that staff negotiation level, so.
Right, and I'll just add, so the agreement right now is the existing agreement until a new agreement gets developed and signed by all parties. Keep in mind that you had the storms in January, you had the storms in March, which took a lot of our resources. But I know that Paul, Mike, and Allison are in on the, and BB and K, Jim, are in on the development of the new agreement. And so when that's going to be done, I don't know. But I know that that's something that needs to be done. Regarding WRA and using source waters, they took the off ramp to not use the source water. So as we speak right now, Monterey One Water is using the source waters, and the gentleman that from the public who asked, what about the Blanco drain? We're getting about 3.5 MGD from the Blanco drain right now and have been for about the last 3 weeks. So that's producing some water. And of course, right now, with the dam and using the water from the Nacimiento and San Antonio to the tune of about 20 MGD, there's a lot of water. And so the concern of getting an agreement isn't where it was last year when we had the drought and trying to get a signed agreement. But I would suggest that all parties get together and work out the issues and come up with an agreement for all parties.
Okay. Any other comments? Very good. That all has to do with Dave Lindell's report. We'll go to staff reports.
Okay, I'd like to start and I'd like to say thank you very much for the board and your support in the budget. That's huge for us as far as working and getting some more projects under our belts. I have a few slides I wanted to share with you. So on May 2nd, we had an industrial wastewater release. Remember, we had to shut down our plant for the Headworks project. So to make a long story short, at midnight, we were going to stop the direct diversion of industrial wastewater. And so SCADA, our control center, basically gave the command to shut the diversion gate 1, which brings industrial wastewater from the city of Salinas, and open diversion gate 2, which sends it out to the city of Salinas ponds. Well, the commands were given, but apparently gate 2 was in a do loop. I'm not sure what other term I can use. So the computer thought it was opening, but it did not indeed open. So we didn't know about it till we received a call from the city of Salinas at 7:32 that morning. And they said, hey, there's water going out from a manhole next to or adjacent to your Salinas pump station. And so our Jose got on SCADA and looked at the screen and said, no, that gate is open. And representative from the city said, no, it's not. I'm standing here looking at it. So even though our system, SCADA, said that that gate was indeed open, it was not open. So that being said, what you're looking at is a spill. It came out of the manhole, the picture on the right. So that manhole is 3 feet below grade, and the lid came off, basically flooded the adjacent fields. And so we worked with the city of Salinas, and since then we have worked with our SCADA programmers and programmed several fail safes so this doesn't happen again. It had an interlock on it, which meant that you could not have the gates closed at the same time. But the computer, since the command was given to open diversion gate 2, it thought that it was opened and opening. So now there's a timeout. So in other words, if the gate doesn't reach its goal of open 100%, then alarm will go off. So there's a time alarm. There's another interlock that until the command is completed, et cetera. So we had our programmer put in and install about 3 additional fail safes. And we're in the process of looking if there's any other issue in our SCADA programming that this may occur, that we're going to fix that as well. So if you look on the next slide, so anytime there's a release, there is the state that requires us to submit a formal report. However, since I've been here, even though a report is not required for the state for this particular release, we still do one internally. So all the information is captured, pictures, timelines, et cetera. This is a picture showing the center of the map is showing our pump station. And 1 is where the manhole was located 3 feet below grade. And it traversed to the northwest. And so where you see the 2s, that's basically where there's the release appearance. And the city of Salinas set up a 2-inch pump where the star is, and they used a 2-inch line and pumped it to the catch basin, which is item number 3. So I talked to Jess Chacon yesterday, or actually today, and the city had been requested by the health department to dig under till what would be a good terminology? The tilling, basically taking the soil and turning it under in the area that there was the release.
Plowing.
Plowing, thank you. Okay.
That was, no, but,
Pick it up.
that was industrial. It was industrial.
It was industrial.
Yeah, there was no.
Right. So
Yeah.
keep in mind, those of you that aren't familiar, industrial wastewater is the wash water that there's ag facilities that wash down the lettuce and their equipment, et cetera. So, and then we worked with the city to help them submit the report because it still had to be reported to the state.
So that grower, so in terms of, because it was an unknown source, they probably had to take that crop out.
That
Yeah.
portion, yes.
Yeah, and they
Yes.
can't, there's no plant back for 60 days
Right,
because of the unknown source.
right.
So, insurance claim.
Yes, and I've let Lyra know, so she's very much aware of the situation. So the next slide, please.
Just to,
Oh, does anybody have any questions?
yeah, do we know what the loss of revenue is for that? Any idea?
We have received a phone call. I believe Mike's on the phone. Mike, did you receive that phone call or?
Mike was on vacation.
I thought so too, but I see him that's on, and if he's on, I'm gonna like,
Yeah, I'm on.
thank you, Mike.
So the number that I thought I heard was around 300,000 gallons. And if I'm mistaken, can be corrected.
Yeah, what we proposed, what we thought based on elevations, based on the SCADA, there was a plug flow that came through, et cetera. And basically the infrastructure held onto the water. And so we ended up stating it was around 324,000. But the question on the table is what number as far as the revenue lost from the crops. I thought we received a phone call from one of the growers stating a loss.
That, Tammy, I haven't seen that.
Okay.
Email.
I'm sure we'll hear. Yes.
Would love to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll keep you posted. Okay, the next slide. So on June 1st, in fact, Mike and Rachel and team scheduled and planned and organized. We met with 30 people from the country of Turkey. They were interested in our recycled water for agriculture. They have a huge program. They were very impressed. In fact, those of you that have ever been out at the plant when the purple flowers are blooming, they thought, did we pick that special for recycle watercolor? We said no. But anyway, so they were spent about 4 hours at the plant. It was very informative. They're basically, in fact, the lady in the top left-hand corner with the purple, she was from AWWA out of Denver, and she pretty much led the group. So they had an interpreter and walked through the entire process of SVRP. And in the upper right, you see Jose. A lot of tours, we go to the front lobby, which has a photo of our entire facility. And then down in the lower left, you see Paul. They presented him with a plate. And they actually gave Mike and Jose and Paul a tie that actually has their logo on the, not on the tie, but on the tag of the tie, and then presented them with this plate. Apparently they have a dam that's the third highest, though I did do some research and I could be the fifth highest, but I'll let them say the third highest. That was finished in 2021. And the saying down below the plate that says Servasa Hayat Var means where there is water, there is life. And so that was very productive, very informative to them. They went to the big town of Turlock, and then they were going to end up at Hoover Dam. They were also going to go somewhere else in the Central Valley, but they appreciated our time and it was a wonderful tour. So thank you, Mike and Rachel, for getting that planned. Then the next slide, as you guys know, Paul isn't here. He's in Singapore, International Water Week. And he sent me this picture over the weekend. He goes, hey, everybody has the same problems we have. If you look, you got budget constraint, shortfalls, unfunded capital, infrastructure, old, unreliable, and prone to problems. So I said, hey, you could have saved airfare. You know, we've got the same issues here. You have to go. And then, so then he shared another picture, which is right off the press. They had a CEO roundtable that he participated in. Of course, he sent a note saying that the gentleman to his left was basically the regulator for Malaysia. So he said, I'm not sure how this is going to work. But anyway, so regulators and people who operate, they kind of have different brainwave links. But anyway, so that's all I have. Fred, do you have anything?
Nothing to add, Tim.
Mike, since you're on the line?
Nothing to add. The Turkey tour was really, really cool. And, you know, even though we didn't really speak their language, it was really interesting to see them learn through the interpreter and that we could share, you know, common goals of trying to conserve water and recycle water. So it was really productive.
Lyra, do you have anything for staff report?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, and then Jim. Okay, we're done here on our side and
All
thank you
right.
so very much again.
Move on to agenda item 12, board member comments. Any comments on my left? Comments on my right? Staff, thank you very much for slogging through all the good work and working with all of us on budgetary issues. Directors, thank you very much for quickly approving a budget so staff can move forward on important projects with the money that our ratepayers are giving them. So we stand adjourned.